Hi, my name is Xander, and we're going to be talking about color perfect inversions today, for better or for worse. Color perfect, first of all, requires a linear scan. So that means that the tones progress evenly throughout the entire image. And sort of like a camera, the stops, they're like stops. So value 1 is exactly half of 2, and value 4 is exactly double 2. And so the percentages of tonal value progress in a way that is totally smooth, totally linear. And this enables the program to interpret the image correctly. If it's not linear, it's not going to work. There are ways you can get DSLR scans to work with color perfect, but generally, if you're DSLR scanning, I would not bother. Just if you're scanning and creating true linear scans from a flatbed scanner, or you have an Imacon and you're scanning with 3F files, this method can work really well. But for anything else, or if you haven't scanned uh, correctly with your TIFF files, it's just not going to work very well. So before we start off, I'm going to give you a tip about downloading and installing the plugin itself. When you download the plugin from the website, and you'll have to buy it, I think it's like $60 now or something like that. You'll see there's a few different versions. Basically, if you're doing it on your laptop and you've got a Mac Retina display, which any Mac from the last 10 years will have, you're going to want to install the Color Perfect Retina plugin. And that goes right here in Applications, Adobe Photoshop, Plugins. Now I keep both in this folder on my Assets archive. I've got the normal Color Perfect and I've got the Retina. So like if I'm editing on my second display, my secondary display, which I usually am, I'll drop this one in there and delete the Retina one, or store it somewhere else for later. You'll know if you do it wrong because it will just display it all like glitchy and stuff. You'll know. I already have this installed, or rather dragged into this folder. You really don't. There's no install. You just drag it into the folder. If you forgot to do that, you'll need to quit and relaunch Photoshop. But now the first thing you'll notice when you get your 3F files is that they're all called .fff. You can just go in and change the name to .tif if you want, although there's a good trick. If you go into the Finder, you say rename here, you can change it from .fff. You can say this replace text option, which is a really great feature, and change it to .tif. And when you change a file extension like this, it's going to say, do you want to do this? It might corrupt your file. And you're like, yep, apply to all. Cool. Now it's all TIFF and you don't have to go do that for every file. It's very convenient. Now, when it opens up to Photoshop, it doesn't have a color space embedded. That's part of the raw nature of it. So when you open it in Photoshop, you're going to make sure you can leave as is, don't color manage. Basically, it'll be in Filter, CF Systems, Color Perfect. And when you open this up, you'll see that it is less than perfect. The thing I'll say about this program is there's only really 2 things you need to do. There are 10,000 things you need to really make sure to avoid doing. This program is set up to do a lot of corrections in here. There's like this color correction thing going on, and there's all kinds of different ways to edit it. But you just want to make sure you have all the tonal information, maybe a basic color, and then get out of there. We're going to do the color correction stuff in Photoshop. It's a much more sophisticated tool. And you're going to just make sure that nothing's clipping in here. That's basically all you can do. Number 1 tip, don't click on anything. It's very intuitive, I know. When you click on something, it will, white balance essentially. So you can see as I'm clicking around, it's doing all kinds of crazy shit. If you accidentally click on something, this button up here, this one is start over entirely. This one is one step back, and this one is one step forward. Over here, there's all these different films. There's Kodak films. Here is the Portras are these ones. So these ones with the emulsions after them, Portra 160, 4059, blah, 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 Portra 400, 4056, blah, 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 blah. Those are the current Portras now. And then Portra 800 here, just the one without anything. That's the one that you'd want. However, you'll find that most of these film characteristic curves are pretty inconsequential. They're like mostly the same. But again, it doesn't really matter. We're really just here to get tones and get out. A lot of the times, I usually just go to user, this one down here, and BW start. This is sort of like the most generic characteristic curve. It's just sort of like a basic starting point. This time I'll just do the portrait one because, I don't know, like I said, it doesn't make a huge difference. What we need to do is zoom into the shadows first. So find your blackest point, hold the control key on your keyboard, and at the same time, click. See it loads for a second there? Now go to the zoom button, zoom into 100%, and it'll zoom into that part that you clicked. Click the BP tails button so that this reads BP up here. Then click in the box, like that. Then use this slider and kind of see this noise in here. You want to bring this down until this thing up here, this shadow degree clip, reads 0.01. I need to bring it down a little further. So I'm going to click in the box, make sure it's clicked, and use the arrow keys on your keyboard. And just kind of keep bringing it down, and I'm just like visually looking at it. I'm waiting for that point where it becomes smooth, which is right about here, okay? If you bring it down too far, it can start to affect the color balance, and it just makes your job harder later. And it probably means that like you're just gonna make that part like totally black anyway later, so you just let it go a little bit. Be careful not to click on the image anywhere. Zoom out, and now find your brightest point. Probably like this stuff over here. If you have like a light bulb or something, don't try to like make that, let that go a little bit, but you'll see sort of the level that you need to bring it down to. You can get a remarkable amount of highlight detail out of this program. That's like probably the best part about it. Now here's the confusing thing. We're gonna go, again, hold control, click the area you want to go to, then click the zoom and go into 100%. And we will hold control and click in the area that we want to move. The further you click out, the bigger the movement. The closer you click to the middle, the smaller the movement. Again, holding control the entire time, because if you click, you will white balance. But again, don't lose your mind. Yeah, you can just click this one step back button and undo that. Keep holding control and go to that highlight point. So probably in here is good. I'll like look at his cigarette here, make sure that's in there. I know there's a white thing, but that's not the white control. That is the amount of white in the blacks. Not very intuitive. We're going to click the black box. Click in the box. Don't just click the button. Click in the box until your cursor is blinking like that. And then the black here is going to control the whites. And I guess it's because it's a negative, so white is black and black is white. That's the best explanation I can offer, but it is what it is. Just accept that it is stupid. Anyway, we're going to click in the box. The cursor's blinking. We got the black thing up here in the drop down. It says black, you're good. So now we're going to, again, take this slider and drag it down. And I was taught to do it till it's about 0.01 in this highlight stop range clip, which is just great nomenclature. In this case, probably drag it down a little more. I kind of want, you see, you start to get a little more like color in here. It'll allow me to sort of play with the curve a little more when I'm doing it. So I'm going to zoom out here. The last thing you could do, if you want, is this auto color box. If you click that, it will kind of help you sort of get a baseline sometimes. If you don't like it, just click the back arrow until it's back to where it was. Pretty much that's all you have to do. You just do the BP tails, you do the black, which is the white, and then you can do auto color, this little box here, if you want. So you say, okay, needs some work, but you have really full tonality here. Even the bright colors are very like fully gradated and colored. I guess we could have brought the BP tails down a little more. There's this little bit of noise in here, but I'm not going to really worry about it. I don't really want to start all over again. That's the thing. You can't use it as a smart filter. You can't do any kind of editable action. There's like, it's a one and done. If you want to redo anything about the inversion, you have to start over. So that's why it's best to just get all the tonal information, not worry too much about anything else. So we've got this. Now, before you do anything, make sure that you do edit, convert to profile, and we're going to do RGB, we're going to do Adobe RGB, use black point to compensation, relative colorimetric. It really is the best color space to use for our photo purposes. Say okay. And now the first thing you're going to want to do is click this little button down here and make a curve. Please label everything. It's a good idea. Now for adjusting contrast, there is no right or wrong way to do this. Contrast is a preference, but generally, if you sort of follow the shape of your histogram, so see how I'm not letting this go beneath the histogram because that's going to clip the data. I'm sort of following just above it, and then this, this little dip here, I'm sort of emulating up here. I'm sort of like inversing it up here. So the next layer we're going to do is a color layer. Call it color one. Now the thing about color layers is that when you have it at 100%, the changes you're making are going to be really drastic, and you may not be able to find a point where it's just right. So what I usually do is turn this to about 30% or so. And that way you'll have more finite control. Like one click will actually take now 3 clicks because you're at 30%. It's almost like going in third stops on your camera versus full stops. And I know some people really like to do the levels thing. You either do levels or you go to curves and you bring in the points on your histogram to the edge like this, for all the channels. But the problem with that is that that assumes that there's a neutral, right? So like at a time like this, where it's meant to be warm, where the light is warm, if you neutralize it like that, it's going to be too cool. And it really only works if you've got a pure white and a pure black that has like pure daylight on it. It can often be a good place to start, but I usually prefer to do a curve for my contrast like this. I will often edit multiple images at a time. I usually keep at least 2 open so I can bounce back and forth and sort of like between the 2 of them get a good balance and just keep my eye like refreshed. One thing I will do sometimes if I'm having like kind of a hard time, like linear scans can be excessively flat sometimes. If you click on your base layer and you hit Command J, copy it, and go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I know it's weird. Hang with me. There is something that clarity does. They affect the midtone contrast, particularly clarity, in a way that's very different from any other adjustment. And also doing clarity on a film scan that's this flat will have a really different effect from when you bump the clarity up to 20 on a digital image, which I would almost never do because it ends up making it look like melted plasticky. But again, bounce back and forth between, a image that you have edited before that you like, or this thing, or another scan that you're working on, and just bounce back and forth and back and forth. Now, one thing I'm sure Paul has gone over with you, the notion that film is naturally really desaturated is kind of a farce. C prints are actually very vibrant, and the color is very rich and not garish, but it's like the film has more color in it than I think people associate with it. Again, if I was bringing this to print, I would do a lot of proofing, a lot of different adjustments, and a big part of that is just go get a cup of coffee, go get some water, drink water all the time. Really helps your color vision, and come back, and you will almost always be like, oh, okay, I didn't see, like, oh, okay, yeah, it does need more of this or that. Another tip, I would say, turn your screen down to about 50% or a little over 50% brightness. It will look dark at first, but your eye will get used to it, and it will make it brighter. The other thing is, I would really recommend right clicking on the background here, say select custom color, and choose a white on this that's like slightly below white, almost white. Your paper is going to be white. If you edit on black or dark gray or whatever, you will perceive color or contrast differently depending on what color or tone is next to the color you're looking at.
Okay, and that about does it for color perfect inversions. Less than perfect. But as much as I malign it, I do think it's a really good tool if you have linear scans or something close to it. You'll know right away if you don't, because you'll try to put it into color perfect and it'll be really screwed up. Digital camera scans really don't fare very well. There are workflows out there that work for that, but if you're doing that, just do the Negative Lab Pro route. It's a really great program. Negative Lab Pro is really great for linear scans as well, but oftentimes I will go the color perfect route if I've got a drum scan or an Imacon scan or a flatbed scan made with like view scan or any kind of linear output. And ultimately, there's no tool that's going to do this perfectly every single time. It really takes a lot of finesse. There's an art to film scanning. I am not the best person in the world at it. I have enough experience doing it that I definitely know the tools and I know how to use them. But there's a real craft and a talent to inverting negatives and knowing what images need to look perfect. So use the tools, practice a lot, and you can get some really great results no matter what you do.